picture this. It's 1978. The aroma of grilling burgers fills the air. A jukebox croons a classic rock tune, and laughter spills out from booths filled with families. But behind the facade of this all-American scene, a chilling mystery is about to unfold. One that would shatter the tranquility of a small town and leave a community grappling with unanswered questions for decades to come.
We're diving into the heart of the Burger Chef murders, a case that gripped Speedway, Indiana, and became a stark reminder that darkness can touch even the most familiar corners of our lives.
We've got newspaper clippings, court documents, even interviews with investigators and journalists who lived through the frenzy of this case. And believe me, what we're about to unpack is a story filled with as many twists and turns as a backroads maze. You'll be hooked from the first bite of information, trust me.
What's particularly fascinating about this case is how a series of seemingly small missteps, oversights, and miscommunications snowballed into a situation where justice became almost impossible to achieve.
Exactly. We're talking about Speedway, Indiana, back in '78. Not exactly known for its hard-boiled crime stories, right? So let's set the scene a bit. Think bell-bottoms, disco music, and a community still reeling from a string of unsolved bombings connected to another murder.
The town was already on edge, and the sense of unease would become a crucial backdrop of the events that would soon unfold. People were locking their doors a little tighter, looking over their shoulders a little more often.
And into this already tense atmosphere walks our cast of characters, 4 young employees at the local Burger Chef, just trying to make an honest buck and maybe snag that Employee of the Month plaque. We've got Jane Free, the ambitious 20-year-old assistant manager with dreams bigger than those greasy fry baskets.
And then there's Ruth Shelton, a 17-year-old whiz kid with a passion for computers. Back then, that was practically science fiction. She had her sights set on a future that sadly would never come.
And let's not forget the boys. We've got Daniel Davis, the quiet 16-year-old with a love for photography and dreams of soaring high in the Air Force.
And rounding out our quartet is Mark Flemons, another 16-year-old known for his quick wit and talent in the school band. It's almost Shakespearean how these 4 lives, each with their own unique melody, were about to be silenced so abruptly.
Now here's where fate plays a cruel hand. Mark wasn't even supposed to be working that night. He'd switched shifts with a friend who, ironically, was going on a date with the very person who would stumble upon the crime scene. Talk about a twist of fate that sends shivers down your spine.
It's one of those details that highlights just how random and unpredictable life can be. One seemingly insignificant decision can have profound and irreversible consequences.
So it's Saturday night, November 18th, 1978. The clock strikes midnight, the fryers are cooling down, and our 4 employees are looking forward to heading home. But that's not what happens. Instead, they vanish without a trace, leaving behind an eerie silence that speaks volumes.
The restaurant is a ghost town. The back door is unlocked. The cash register is empty, and the employees' personal belongings are still there as if they simply stepped out for a moment and never returned.
Enter Brian Kring, a friend and fellow employee, who stops by after closing time to visit his coworkers. He walks into a scene straight out of a nightmare. The unsettling silence, the abandoned belongings, the feeling that something is terribly wrong.
It's a chilling discovery that would set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of this small town.
Brian immediately calls the police, his voice trembling with fear and urgency. But here's where the story takes its first frustrating turn. Remember that context we talked about, the town on edge from the bombings? Well, the police may be a bit too eager to dismiss anything that didn't fit the pattern. Initially brushed it off as a teen prank or a minor theft.
A colossal blunder. Instead of treating the scene with the gravity it deserved, they failed to secure it, allowing crucial evidence to be potentially compromised.
And if that wasn't bad enough, the employees who arrived for the morning shift were actually instructed to clean the entire restaurant, unknowingly obliterating any fingerprints, footprints, or other trace evidence that could have been vital to the investigation.
Imagine that the very people who were supposed to be investigating a potential crime scene were inadvertently destroying evidence that could have helped solve it.
It's a jaw-dropping moment of realization, one that makes you question how such a critical error could have occurred. And it's just the tip of the iceberg in a series of missteps that would plague this investigation from the very beginning.
The Burger Chef murders become a textbook example of how not to handle a crime scene. A cautionary tale of the devastating consequences that can arise from overlooking seemingly minor details and failing to grasp the full gravity of a situation in its early stages.
So we've got a missing persons case that's quickly escalating into something far more sinister. The police, now realizing they've made a monumental error, are scrambling to catch up, but they're already playing a game of catch-up. They may never win.
And as the hours tick by, the families of the four missing teens are left in agonizing limbo, clinging to hope while facing the growing reality that something terrible has happened to their loved ones.
So here we are, a small town, a shocking disappearance, and a bungled investigation. It's like someone threw a handful of puzzle pieces in the air and then kicked the table over.
What's interesting is how this sense of chaos wasn't just at the crime scene itself. It permeated the entire investigation, even the media coverage. Imagine this was happening at the same time as the Jonestown massacre.
Talk about being overshadowed. A local tragedy, even one as horrifying as this, just couldn't compete with a story of that magnitude.
Exactly. The families of these missing kids are desperate for answers, but the world's attention is focused elsewhere. They must have added another layer of isolation to their grief.
It's heartbreaking. And the police, already feeling the heat from their initial mistakes, aren't exactly winning any PR awards. They're tight-lipped, maybe even a little defensive, which only fuels the media frenzy.
You can almost feel the tension through these old newspaper articles. The Speedway police chief even imposed a gag order on his own department, refusing to talk to reporters.
Classic move, when in doubt, clam up. That always inspires confidence, right?
Of course not. It just created more suspicion, more rumors. It's almost as if they were digging themselves a deeper hole with every silent step.
Meanwhile, the search for the missing teens continues, but every potential lead seems to turn into a dead end. They find Jane's car abandoned a few blocks from the police station, but it's only partially locked, which is totally out of character for her.
This suggests she might have been forced out of the passenger side, adding another layer of intrigue to the case. Was she taken by force? Was someone else driving her car?
More questions, no answers. And then there's the chilling account from a couple who were parked near the Burger Chef around 11:15 that night, just an hour or so before Brian's discovery. They reported being approached by two men who told them to leave the area, claiming there'd been vandalism.
One of the men was even covering his face with a handkerchief.
Huh.
Talk about creepy. Were these guys just opportunists taking advantage of a distracted town, or were they somehow connected to the missing teens?
The couple's description of the men led to composite sketches being released, but despite hundreds of tips pouring in, no one could definitively identify them. It's another frustrating dead end.
And as days turn into weeks, the grim reality starts to set in. This isn't a runaway situation. This isn't a prank. Something truly terrible has happened.
And then comes the news that no one wanted to hear.
Well,
On Sunday, November 19th, the bodies of all four teenagers are found in a remote wooded area about 40 minutes from Speedway. The discovery made by a man walking his property shattered any remaining hope that the teens might still be alive.
the crime scene is a grim tableau. Ruth and Daniel are found lying face down, each shot multiple times in the head, neck, and shoulders. It's a brutal scene, one that speaks to a level of rage that goes beyond a simple robbery gone wrong.
Jane and Mark are found a short distance away, their deaths equally horrifying. Jane was stabbed repeatedly in the chest with such force that the knife blade actually broke off inside her.
And Mark's death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head. The specific weapon never identified, the varying causes of death, the scattered location of the bodies, it all suggests a chaotic and violent struggle. A scene that must have been absolutely terrifying for those poor kids.
So we have four teenagers brutally murdered, a robbery with unclear motives, and a crime scene that was essentially erased before the investigation could even begin. Where do you even start to untangle a mess like this?
It's a nightmare scenario for any investigator. With so much crucial evidence potentially lost or contaminated, it's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle, where half the pieces are missing and the others are smudged beyond recognition.
And as if things weren't complicated enough, the investigation takes another strange turn with the arrest of two men in Milwaukee who bear a striking resemblance to those composite sketches we talked about.
Their names were Stephen Coffey and Norman Pepin, and they were apprehended for a crime that was eerily similar to the Burger Chef murders, a robbery, a double homicide, victims forced to lie face down before being executed.
Chilling, right? It seemed like a major break in the case, a possible connection that could finally lead to some answers. But then, just as quickly as it appeared, this lead fizzles out.
The police investigate their alibi and ultimately rule them out as suspects. But given the investigation's track record, it's hard not to wonder if they were a little too quick to dismiss this lead, if maybe they missed something crucial in their rush to find a solution.
It's a question that lingers, especially as years pass, with no significant progress in the case. The families are left with the agonizing weight of unanswered questions. The community is haunted by the brutality of the crime, and the investigators are left to grapple with the consequences of their early mistakes.
The Burger Chef murders become a cold case, a file gathering dust in a police archive, A chilling reminder that sometimes even the most horrific crimes can go unpunished, leaving behind a legacy of pain and unanswered questions.
It's almost a cruel joke, isn't it? After years of dead ends and false hope, the investigators finally have a confession, but it's like trying to grasp smoke.
It really highlights the limitations of confessions, especially in a case as botched as this one. Can you really trust a confession when the investigation itself is so flawed? What good is a confession riddled with inconsistencies when the very foundation of the case is shaky at best?
It's a hard truth to swallow, especially for the victims' families who would finally dare.
And in the end, Goldsmith makes the difficult decision to not pursue charges against Forrester. He acknowledges that Forrester is likely responsible for the murders, but the lack of solid physical evidence linking him to the crime, the inconsistencies in his statements, and the possibility of coercion during his confession all make a successful prosecution incredibly unlikely.
It's a devastating blow for the families to be told that the man who likely took their children from them won't face trial because of the very people who are supposed to protect them, to seek justice on their behalf.
It's a tragic illustration of how systemic failures can have real human consequences.
The families are left grappling with the agonizing reality that they may never know the full truth, that the questions surrounding their loved ones' deaths may forever remain unanswered. And the community of Speedway, once a symbol of Americana, is left with this chilling reminder that darkness can lurk even in the most familiar places, and that the systems we rely on can sometimes fail us in the most profound ways.
The Burger Chef murders become a tragic case study not just in the human capacity for violence, but also in the importance of proper police procedure, the need for clear communication and collaboration between agencies, and the devastating impact of even seemingly small errors in a criminal investigation.
It's almost as if the sister itself became an accomplice to the crime, its flaws and failings creating a shield that protected the perpetrators from the full weight of justice.
The case, though officially unsolved, remains open, but the files filled with thousands of pages of statements, reports, and dead-end leads sit untouched in a police archive, a testament to a botched investigation and a haunting reminder of 4 young lives tragically cut short. 45 years have passed since that fateful night in Speedway, and the Burger Chef murders remain a chilling reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved. It's a story that compels us to ask tough questions about accountability, about the pursuit of justice, and about the enduring power of hope in the face of unimaginable loss.